All right, strap yourselves in because today we're going deep into missing persons cases. But not just any missing persons cases. No, no. We're talking about the ones with a time travel twist.
Time travel, huh?
Yeah. The kind of disappearances where the circumstances are just so bizarre, you can't help but wonder, what if? What if time travel is the answer?
It is fascinating, isn't it, how these real-life cases with documented details and all can just leave us completely baffled. I mean, there's a part of us that just loves a good mystery, right? Especially one that challenges our whole understanding of how the world works.
Absolutely. And we've got a mountain of sources here. They're packed with these puzzling accounts. Missing explorers, vanished scientists, folks who seemingly blinked out of existence.
Out of thin air.
Exactly. It's enough to make anyone question, like, the nature of time itself.
You know, what's really interesting to me is that there's often just enough evidence, or the lack of it, I guess, to keep those impossible explanations alive.
Okay, so let's jump right into our first case.
Mm-hmm.
Rudolph Fentz. This guy appeared in Times Square in 1950, but dressed like he'd just stepped out of the 1800s.
I've heard of this one.
Picture it. The heart of Times Square, 1950s, bustling with activity, and this guy just shows up looking totally out of place. Not just a little out of fashion, but like seriously out of time.
Like a time traveler.
Right. And here's where it gets even more bizarre. He was carrying old coins, a bill for horse care from a stable that didn't exist anymore, and a business card with his name on it.
Wow.
So, of course, the police start digging and find records of a Rudolph Fentz who vanished back in 1876. Same name, same time period as his clothes. It's just too much of a coincidence.
It makes you think, doesn't it? I mean, what are the chances?
Exactly. Could it really be the same man who somehow traveled almost a century into the future?
It's definitely a story that gets you thinking, even if officially, it's been labeled as just an urban legend. Those specific details, that's what really makes you stop and go, what if?
Okay, let's set sail for the high seas now. We're going way back to 1611 and the mysterious disappearance of Henry Hudson and his crew. They were searching for the Northwest Passage, but things took a dark turn.
Oh, yeah, this is a classic maritime mystery.
A mutiny broke out, and Hudson, his son, and a few loyal crewmen were set adrift in a small boat. They were never seen again.
Just vanished into the vast ocean.
But here's where it gets even creepier. There have been reports over the years, even centuries later, of sightings of a strange ship in the Arctic. An old-fashioned ship, And some people even claim to have seen figures on board wearing clothes from Hudson's time.
You're kidding?
Nope. So it's like they're trapped in some kind of time warp, sailing endlessly through the Arctic.
It does kind of make you wonder. I mean, on the one hand, stories like that, they tend to, embellish over time. But on the other hand, the idea of them being frozen in time, it's hard to shake. What do you think?
Okay, so next up is a case for the science bucks out there. The disappearance of Ettore Majorana, a brilliant Italian physicist. It was back in 1938.
Majorana. Now, this is an interesting one.
Right. He was a leading figure in nuclear physics. And right before he vanished, he sent some cryptic letters hinting at a major discovery he'd made.
Oh, what kind of discovery?
Well, that's the mystery, isn't it? Some believe this discovery might have been related to time travel itself. Or maybe something so revolutionary, so potentially dangerous, that he decided to disappear to protect the world, like a secret that could change everything.
That's pretty wild.
And here's the thing. There have been reports of people seeing a man who looks like Majorana decades later. And not just random sightings. Sometimes he's talking about advanced physics, stuff way ahead of his time.
So it's like he stepped out of one era and into another.
Exactly. Leaving everyone to wonder what really happened to him.
Real head scratcher. It really makes you wonder, what if he did crack the code to time travel? What if he's out there somewhere, in another time, another place?
Okay, we've talked about people from the past maybe traveling to the present, but get this. What about a time traveler from the future? Ever heard of John Titor?
John Titor. The name rings a bell.
He claimed to be a time traveler from the year 2036. Popped up on internet forums in the early 2000s, sharing predictions about the future. Even talked about his mission to retrieve an IBM computer from the past. Pretty specific, right?
Yeah, that is pretty specific.
But here's the thing. He knew things about this IBM computer, the IBM 5100. Details about its programming capabilities that weren't widely known at all. How could someone from, well, his supposed time period even know about that stuff?
That is a good question.
Right. So was he a genuine time traveler or just a really, really good internet hoaxer? You decide. And to add to the mystery, he vanished from the internet as quickly as he appeared.
Poof. Like he'd completed his mission and gone back to his own time.
Exactly, leaving us with more questions than answers.
Okay.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit now and talk about Victor Goddard, a British RAF officer. His story isn't so much about a disappearance, but more about some very strange experiences that suggest maybe time isn't as straightforward as we think.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
There are two incidents in particular that stand out. One happened in 1935. Goddard was flying over an abandoned airfield. It was completely deserted. But as he flew over it, he saw it bustling with activity, mechanics working on these bright yellow planes. Years later, that same airfield was reactivated. And guess what? The planes they used, yep, painted bright yellow.
Wow, that's spooky.
Right, it's like he got a glimpse of the future. And then in the 1940s, he had another vision, this time of his office completely modernized. And you guessed it. The details of his vision later matched perfectly with the renovations that actually happened.
So he's seeing things before they happen.
Yeah, like he's somehow experiencing these events out of order. It's like flipping through channels on a TV, catching glimpses at different moments in time. Could Goddard have somehow slipped through time experiencing these events before they actually happened in his timeline? It makes you wonder.
It really does.
Okay, let's bring things a little closer to our own time now with the case of Lars Mittank. He was a young German man who vanished in 2014 while on vacation in Bulgaria. This one is unsettling.
What happened?
Well, it seems Mittank was acting really strangely, like he was scared of something, paranoid even. He'd had a minor injury and went to the hospital, but then he just ran away, like he was terrified of something.
That's not good.
And we have security footage of him running from the hospital and disappearing into the forest nearby.
Yeah.
Chilling stuff.
Yeah, that'll give you chills.
So some folks speculate that maybe he saw something terrifying, something he couldn't make sense of, or maybe he was having, some kind of mental break. But whatever the case, the fact that we have no answers makes it really eerie.
It's the not knowing that gets you.
Now, here's a case that kind of blurs the lines between time travel and alternate realities. It's the story of Carol Chase McElhenney.
I'm all ears.
So she went to visit her childhood hometown back in 2006. But something was just off. She found the town completely different. Landmarks were missing. Even her family home was totally different. It was like she had stepped into a parallel version of her town.
Like a glitch in the Matrix.
Exactly. But the strangest part, when she went back a few years later, everything was back to normal, like her experience had never happened.
So she went to an alternate version of her town, and then it just snapped back to normal.
It's wild, right?
Hmm.
Makes you wonder if there could be multiple timelines existing at the same time, or maybe alternate realities coexisting with our own. Could she have somehow slipped between them?
Now you're making my head spin.
Okay, ready for something truly spooky? Let's talk about siren callers.
Siren callers.
You're hiking through the woods, you hear a voice calling your name, maybe even a familiar voice. You turn to follow it, but get disoriented, lost.
I've heard stories like that.
Hikers and campers have been reporting these mysterious voices for generations. They say they lure people deeper into the wilderness. Spooky campfire stories, right?
Unless they're true.
Right. What if those voices are real? Some believe they're, supernatural spirits or something. But what if they're voices from the past or the future, somehow bleeding into our present? It's a creepy thought.
No kidding.
And that brings us to Lawrence Joseph Bader, an Ohio salesman who disappeared in 1957. Now, this isn't just a regular missing person case. 8 years later, he reappeared in Kansas under a completely different name, Fritz Johnson. And he had zero memory of his former life.
He just started a whole new life.
Like a clean slate. Even when confronted with evidence of his true identity, he clung to this new persona. So did he slip through time, emerge with a whole new identity? It makes you question everything about memory, identity, even reality itself.
This is getting dip.
Now, we can't talk about possible time slips without mentioning the Moberly Jourdan incident. It happened back in 1901. 2 women were visiting the Palace of Versailles in France, and they claimed to see people dressed in 18th century clothing. They even described seeing Marie Antoinette and her courtiers.
No way.
They said it was like looking into the past, everything slightly faded, out of place. But when they went back to the same spot later, it was completely normal, like their experience had never happened.
So did they really have a time slip back to the French Revolution?
It's a story that's been told and retold for over a century, and it really makes you think, what if our perception of reality is far more fluid than we realize?
Okay, I'm starting to question everything now.
Me too. All right, that's just the tip of the iceberg. We've got many more mind-boggling stories to unpack. Stick around. Welcome back to the show. We're diving right back into these mind-boggling time travel mysteries. And up next, we've got a story that's equal parts captivating and tragic. The disappearance of Colonel Percy Fawcett, one of history's most famous explorers.
Oh yeah, Fawcett. Now that's a name that's synonymous with adventure and mystery.
Exactly. So this wasn't just your average expedition. This was a full-blown obsession. Back in 1925, Fawcett went deep into the Amazon rainforest, convinced he'd find this lost city. He called it Z, a hidden civilization.
Like El Dorado.
Kind of. He set out with his son and a companion, and they were determined to make history, uncover this lost world.
Brave or maybe a little crazy.
Maybe a bit of both, right? But here's the thing. They vanished. Just like that. Swallowed whole by the jungle. Their last message said they were heading deeper into uncharted territory, but after that, nothing. Silence.
Completely disappeared.
Poof. Gone. It sparked huge search efforts, but nothing conclusive was ever found. No trace of them, no sign of Z. I mean, think about it. The Amazon rainforest. It's vast, dense, unexplored. It's like stepping into another world, a world with its own rules.
A world that might hold secrets we're not meant to find.
Exactly. Some people believe Fawcett actually did find Z, but it exists outside of our normal understanding of time. Like, it's hidden in a place that our current physics can't even explain.
Interesting.
What if he stumbled upon something so advanced, so beyond our comprehension, that it erased any trace of their existence?
The Amazon's always been shrouded in mystery, right? It's like a place where reality itself bends at the edges. Even with all our technology, so much of it remains unexplored. It's a good reminder that there are still vast unknowns in the world.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit now and go back to 18th century England. We've got this strange case of Owen Parfitt.
Who was Owen Parfitt?
He was an elderly man, disabled. He couldn't have gone far on his own, right? But one day, he vanished from right outside his home, just gone. No struggle, no witnesses, nothing.
Sick like that.
Like he ceased to exist. Poof. It makes you wonder, what could possibly explain something like that?
It is strange. The idea that someone could just disappear, no trace, no explanation, it plays on those deep-seated fears we all have, you know? The unknown, forces beyond our control, things we can't explain.
Exactly. Okay, so we've had a vanishing old man. Now, how about a mysterious young man who seemingly appeared out of thin air? I'm talking about Caspar Hauser. He turned up in Nuremberg, Germany in 1828.
Caspar Hauser, I've heard that name before.
He was a teenager, barely able to speak. Claimed he'd spent his whole life locked up in a dark cell. Just imagine that. The isolation, the sensory deprivation. It's a chilling thought.
It is a bit creepy.
He had a letter with him, hinting at his past, but no one ever figured out where he came from or who he really was. Some say it was all a hoax, you know, that someone had kept him isolated and then just dumped him in Nuremberg as a cruel experiment.
Kind of messed up.
Totally. But what if it wasn't a hoax? What if he really was from another time, another dimension, and suddenly found himself in a world he didn't understand?
It's a mystery for the ages.
It really is. A story that captures the imagination and just makes you wonder about all the possibilities. All right, so we've had someone appear out of nowhere. Now, how about someone vanishing into thin air? I'm talking about David Lang, a farmer from Tennessee.
What happened to him?
Well, it was 1880. He was walking across his field in broad daylight when he just vanished, mid-step, gone.
No way! In front of witnesses.
Witnesses say he just disappeared. Poof. They searched everywhere but found nothing.
Must have been terrifying for them.
And it gets weirder. Months later, his family claimed to hear faint cries for help coming from the field, as if Lang was trapped somewhere, calling out to them from beyond. So did he accidentally walk into some kind of time slip? Stumble into a parallel dimension?
It's a wild thought.
It is. I mean, was it real or just people trying to make sense of a tragedy? The human mind can be pretty powerful, especially when it comes to dealing with the unknown. Okay, let's fast forward now to 1946. We have the baffling case of Paula Jean Weldon. She was an 18-year-old who disappeared while hiking the Long Trail in Vermont.
I've heard of the Long Trail. Isn't that a pretty rugged area?
Yeah, it can be. It's beautiful, but easy to get lost out there, especially if you're not careful. There was a huge search for Paula, but they never found her.
So another disappearance.
But here's where it gets interesting. Decades later, hikers reported seeing a woman who matched her description. She was disoriented, asking for directions, like she'd just stepped out of the past.
Like she was lost in time.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like she was displaced in time, reappearing years later, still lost and confused. Could this be a case of someone actually slipping out of their own timeline and reappearing years later?
It would explain a lot.
All right, get ready for this next one. It might sound like something out of a fairy tale, but it's been part of folklore for centuries. The Green Children of Woolpit.
Green children.
Yeah, green skin.
Mm.
It's a legend from 12th century England. Two kids, a brother and sister, turned up near the village of Woolpit. They were completely green
Hmm.
and spoke some unknown language wearing these strange clothes.
Sounds like something out of a movie.
Right. They claimed to come from this subterranean land where there was no sun. The boy didn't make it, but the girl, she adapted to life in Woolpit, and over time, her green skin faded. So were they travelers from another time? Or a parallel world? Or maybe just a really good story?
It's definitely a good story.
Okay, hold on to your hats because this next one is a real doozy. Have you ever heard of the man from Tord?
Tord doesn't ring a bell.
This guy just shows up at a Tokyo airport in 1954.
Yeah.
Normal enough, right? Except his passport was from a country that didn't exist,
A fake passport.
but it looked real. Stamps, visas, everything. The authorities couldn't find any record of this country. Tord.
So what does she say?
He insisted it was a real country in Europe, right where Andorra is, even pointed it out on a map, but no Tord. They detained him for questioning, and guess what?
They escaped.
He vanished from his hotel room, guarded hotel room, all his belongings gone too. Poof.
Like he just stepped back into his own reality.
It's a story that makes you wonder about the boundaries of our reality. What if there really are other worlds out there, just beyond our perception? Okay, we've got to talk about Ambrose Bierce. He was this famous American writer known for his dark, cynical wit.
Okay, I'm listening.
So back in 1913, he was in Mexico, and he just vanished. His last letter said he was heading to an unknown destination, and that was it. Gone. Never heard from him again.
Sounds like someone he would disappear like that.
Right? Intentional or something else? Did he stumble into something beyond our understanding? We'll never know. It's a story that's haunted literary circles for over a century, and it reminds us that sometimes the greatest mysteries are the ones that remain unsolved. Okay, that's just a glimpse into some of the most mind-boggling cases out there. There's so much more to explore, so many more questions to ponder. We'll be back in a flash to dive into the final chapter of our time travel deep dive. Stay tuned. And we're back, ready for the final chapter of our deep dive into time travel mysteries. I gotta say, after all these stories, I'm starting to think that reality is a lot more, well, flexible than we think.
You know, it really does feel like we've been getting these little peeks behind the curtain,
Yeah.
glimpses of something vast and mysterious that's just out of reach. It's amazing how these cases, whether they're based on, documented events or passed down through generations, they all highlight how much we still don't know about, well, time, the boundaries of reality, the potential for things that seem, well, impossible.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? And we've got a few more cases to explore before we wrap things up. We're going way back now to the time of Sir Francis Bacon, the Renaissance, the father of the scientific method. But this story isn't about his scientific breakthroughs. It's about something much stranger.
Oh, let's hear it.
Well, some accounts say that two of Bacon's lab assistants just vanished. Poof, while working on experiments in his laboratory.
Vanished? Like how?
That's the mystery. Imagine it. Bubbling flasks, strange contraptions, and suddenly, two people just disappear. No explanation, no trace.
I wonder, could Bacon's experiments have accidentally, opened a door to another time, another dimension? What if, in trying to understand the natural world, he stumbled upon something that, well, broke the rules of reality as we know it?
It's a wild thought, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's fast forward a few centuries now. We've got a story that's become local legend. The vanishing of James Worson, an English shoemaker. This one's straight out of a ghost story.
Okay, what happened to the shoemaker?
He was running a race with some friends back in 1873 when he suddenly tripped and vanished right into thin air,
While he was running.
mid-stride. People saw it happen. 1 minute he's there, the next, poof, gone.
I'd have fainted. So what, like a time slip? A time portal suddenly opened up and swallowed him?
Some folks think so. Others, well, they say it's just a tall tale. But it's a story that stuck around, Makes you think about how fragile reality might be.
That our world could just open up and swallow us. Yeah, I don't like that thought.
Nobody does. Okay, let's head over to New York City now. Early 1900s, the case of Dorothy Arnold, a young socialite who vanished without a trace.
Another vanishing.
It was 1910. Dorothy was shopping in broad daylight, bustling streets, lots of people around. And then she was gone, just like that.
Did anyone see anything?
Nope, a massive search, but they found nothing. Theories flew around. She ran away, she met with foul play. But the truth, no one knows. It's unsettling, isn't it? The idea that someone can just vanish in a city that big and leave no trace.
Like she stepped into another dimension or walked through a time portal.
Makes you think, doesn't it? Okay, well, we've journeyed through time, haven't we? Across continents. We've had vanishing explorers, physicists who maybe stepped out of their own time, folks claiming to be from the future, and stories that just defy explanation. And, it's these stories, whether they're true or not, that really make you question things. Makes you wonder about what's really out there.
They spark the imagination, right, and make us question what we think we know about the world. Maybe time travel really is possible. Maybe there are parallel worlds right alongside our own.
And maybe, just maybe, somewhere out there, the impossible is happening right now. So if you could travel through time, where would you go? What mysteries would you chase? What would you want to see with your own eyes? These stories, they remind us that reality might be a lot stranger and more wonderful than we think, and that the universe is full of secrets waiting to be discovered. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.